You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your Security Plus certification journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Virtualization vulnerabilities arise from weaknesses in the platforms that host virtual machines and guest environments. A hypervisor, which manages multiple guest systems on a single physical server, becomes a critical point of security concern. Flaws in the hypervisor can allow attackers to disrupt or control all hosted virtual machines, multiplying the impact of compromise. Guest operating systems also introduce risks when misconfigured or unpatched, as vulnerabilities may propagate across shared resources. Virtualization creates efficiency and scalability, but it also creates dependency. The entire environment relies on the security of a single management layer. Defenders must secure both hypervisors and guest systems to prevent cascading failures. One of the most severe virtualization threats is hypervisor escape. In this attack class, a malicious process inside a virtual machine manages to break out of its isolated environment and interact directly with the hypervisor. Once successful, the attacker can affect not only the host but also other guest systems running on the same server. This destroys the illusion of isolation that underpins virtualization security. Hypervisor escapes are rare but high impact, often requiring sophisticated exploits. Defenders must apply patches promptly and restrict administrative access to hypervisors, recognizing that a single flaw at this level jeopardizes entire virtual infrastructures. Misconfigured virtual network overlays and bridges are another source of exposure. Virtualized environments rely on complex networking to connect virtual machines and containers. Poorly secured virtual switches or bridges may allow unauthorized traffic to flow between segments, enabling attackers to bypass intended isolation. Overlay networks that span across hosts add further complexity, sometimes obscuring visibility into traffic patterns. Misconfiguration here can replicate the risks of flat networks in physical environments, amplifying the attack surface. To secure virtualized networking, defenders must apply segmentation principles rigorously, ensuring policies extend into the virtual layer just as they would for physical network infrastructure. Containers present a distinct class of vulnerabilities compared to full virtual machines. Unlike VMs, which emulate hardware, containers share the host's operating system kernel. This lightweight approach improves efficiency but reduces isolation, meaning a compromise in one container could impact the entire host if misconfigured. Container vulnerabilities often stem from weak isolation, misconfigured namespaces, or insecure inter-container communication. Attackers may also exploit privilege escalation within containers to access host resources. While containers simplify deployment, their shared kernel model demands careful security practices. Defenders must treat containers as unique environments with their own risks rather than simply scaled-down virtual machines. Image sprawl and unvetted VM or container images create another vulnerability vector. Organizations often accumulate large numbers of virtual machine snapshots or container images without proper oversight. Outdated images may contain unpatched software, while unvetted images from public repositories can introduce malware or backdoors. Attackers target these weaknesses because images are frequently reused across environments, multiplying the impact of compromise. Secure image management requires provenance checks, regular patching, and the removal of obsolete versions. Without discipline, image sprawl becomes a silent but pervasive exposure, providing attackers with predictable and poorly maintained entry points into otherwise modernized environments. The shared responsibility model in cloud computing defines how security duties are split between providers and customers. Cloud vendors secure the infrastructure itself, including hardware, hypervisors, and global services. Customers, however, remain responsible for securing their applications, data, identities, and configurations. Misunderstanding this model leads many organizations to assume the provider handles more than it actually does. Attackers exploit these gaps, targeting customer misconfigurations rather than provider infrastructure. Clear understanding of the shared responsibility model is essential. It reminds organizations that outsourcing infrastructure does not outsource accountability. Security obligations remain, even if the physical systems are managed elsewhere. Identity and access misconfigurations represent some of the most common cloud vulnerabilities. Cloud platforms rely heavily on identity and access management, IAM, to control resources. Overly permissive roles, unmonitored accounts, or missing multi-factor authentication expose critical assets to exploitation. Attackers frequently exploit misconfigured IAM policies to escalate privileges or move laterally across cloud environments. Because cloud resources are often directly accessible from the internet, IAM missteps become high-value targets. Defenders must adopt strict identity governance, applying least privilege and continuous monitoring. In cloud contexts, identity often becomes the true perimeter, making misconfiguration a central and dangerous risk. Exposed cloud storage is another recurring vulnerability. Misconfigured buckets, containers, or file shares can leave sensitive data publicly accessible. In many breaches, the problem has not been advanced exploits, but simply storage services configured without proper access control lists, ACLs. Attackers routinely scan for exposed storage, harvesting valuable data with little effort. This issue illustrates how convenience and speed in cloud deployment can undermine security. To mitigate, organizations must enforce encryption, apply strict permissions, and monitor storage settings regularly. Cloud storage should never be assumed safe by default. It requires active management to avoid becoming a liability. APIs are the lifeblood of cloud environments, but they also introduce exposure risks. Overly permissive IAM policies may allow broad access through APIs, enabling attackers to manipulate resources once credentials are obtained. Poorly secured APIs lacking authentication or rate limits are prime targets for exploitation. Because APIs are essential for automation and integration, disabling them is not an option. Instead, defenders must enforce strict authentication, monitor API usage patterns, and restrict permissions to specific roles. Recognizing APIs as both powerful tools and vulnerable entry points helps organizations balance flexibility with the necessary caution to secure them effectively. Visibility into virtualized and cloud asset inventories is critical for managing risk. Virtual machines, containers, storage, and APIs can be spun up quickly, often without central oversight. This creates shadow IT within cloud platforms where resources exist outside official governance. Attackers exploit forgotten or unmanaged assets, knowing they are unlikely to be patched or monitored. Comprehensive inventory systems provide defenders with awareness of every resource deployed across accounts and regions. Without visibility, vulnerability management becomes guesswork. With it, organizations can enforce policies consistently, monitor usage, and ensure no resource is left unattended as an open target. Drift between intended security baselines and actual cloud configurations is another challenge. Over time, administrators may make ad hoc changes that deviate from hardened baselines, such as opening unnecessary ports or disabling encryption. These changes may solve short-term problems, but introduce long-term vulnerabilities. Cloud environments make drift particularly easy, as changes can be applied with a few clicks or scripts. Detecting and correcting drift requires automated compliance tools that compare live environments against defined baselines. Without such controls, organizations accumulate hidden risks, leaving gaps attackers can exploit. Managing drift ensures cloud security postures remain aligned with intended protections. Ultimately, virtualization and cloud computing introduce new operational security considerations. Hypervisor vulnerabilities, container risks, IAM misconfigurations, and exposed storage all expand the attack surface in ways traditional infrastructures did not. The pace of change and the ease of deploying new resources increase the likelihood of missteps. Defenders must adapt by extending traditional principles, least privilege, segmentation, patching into virtualized and cloud-native contexts. Security here is less about building strong walls and more about constant visibility, verification, and governance. Recognizing these unique challenges is the first step toward managing the evolving risks of virtualization and cloud adoption. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Hardening hypervisors begins with limiting the number of administrative interfaces and ensuring they are never exposed directly to the public internet. Hypervisors should only be accessible from tightly controlled management networks with multi-factor authentication enforced for administrative users. Disabling unnecessary services and applying patches promptly reduces attack opportunities at this foundational layer. Since hypervisors control all hosted workloads, they represent one of the highest value targets in virtualized environments. An attacker with hypervisor control can bypass the isolation guarantees between virtual machines entirely. Hardening practices minimize these risks by reducing exposure, ensuring attackers have fewer ways to probe or compromise the core virtualization platform. Secure image management is essential to prevent vulnerabilities from proliferating across virtual machines or containers. Images should originate from trusted sources, be verified for authenticity, and contain only minimal required components. The principle of minimal footprint reduces attack surface by eliminating unnecessary software that could harbor flaws. Regular patching of base images ensures that new deployments are not vulnerable from the moment they start. Additionally, organizations should maintain curated, approved image repositories to prevent the use of unvetted public sources. By controlling the provenance and contents of images, defenders cut off a common avenue for introducing malware or outdated code into environments. Network segmentation and microsegmentation strengthen security within virtual environments. Traditional segmentation divides networks into zones, but microsegmentation goes further by isolating workloads at a finer level of granularity. This ensures that even if attackers compromise one virtual machine, they cannot easily move laterally to others. Policy-driven microsegmentation restricts communication based on workload roles, reducing the impact of any single breach. Virtualized networks make such fine-grained segmentation easier to implement than in physical environments, but they require careful policy design and continuous monitoring. By segmenting aggressively, organizations contain attacks and prevent them from spreading unchecked through shared virtual infrastructure. Container security requires its own set of best practices. Containers should run with the least privilege necessary, avoiding root-level execution whenever possible. Image scanning tools can detect vulnerabilities and malware before deployment, ensuring that containers start in a secure state. The principle of immutability, where containers are replaced rather than modified, reduces the risk of configuration drift and unauthorized changes. Together, these practices mitigate the inherent risks of containers, shared kernel architecture. Containers provide agility and efficiency, but without disciplined security measures, they can introduce significant exposure. Applying least privilege, scanning, and immutability makes container environments far more resilient against exploitation. Cloud Identity and Access Management (IAM) must follow strict best practices. Roles should be assigned based on least privilege, ensuring accounts and services only have access to what they absolutely need. Role separation prevents a single compromised identity from granting wide-ranging control. Conditional access policies, such as requiring stronger authentication for sensitive actions or restricting access by location, add further safeguards. Attackers frequently target IAM misconfigurations because they can unlock entire environments without touching infrastructure. Treating IAM as the true perimeter in cloud systems reflects the reality that identity, rather than network boundaries, is the primary line of defense. Encryption is essential for protecting data in cloud environments, both in transit and at rest. Cloud storage services should enforce encryption by default, using strong algorithms and secure key management practices. Transit encryption, typically via TLS, ensures that data cannot be intercepted as it moves between clients, applications, and cloud services. Key management is critical. Compromised keys can render encryption useless. Some organizations use dedicated hardware security modules, HSMs, to store and protect cryptographic keys. By combining strong encryption with rigorous key governance, defenders ensure that even if attackers gain access to cloud storage, the data remains unreadable and unusable. Logging, centralized telemetry, and cross-account monitoring are vital for visibility in cloud setups. Cloud platforms generate vast amounts of logs, including authentication events, API calls, and storage access attempts. Centralizing these logs ensures consistent monitoring across accounts and regions, preventing gaps in visibility. Cross-account monitoring is especially important for large organizations with multiple tenants or business units. Telemetry helps defenders identify anomalies, such as suspicious API activity or repeated login failures. Without centralized visibility, cloud environments become fragmented, allowing attacks to progress unnoticed. Effective monitoring unifies detection efforts, turning vast amounts of activity data into actionable intelligence for defenders. Automated policy enforcement tools, such as Cloud Security Posture Management (CSPM) platforms, help ensure configuration compliance at scale. These tools continuously scan cloud environments, comparing live configurations against security baselines. If drift occurs, such as a storage bucket becoming public, they can automatically remediate or alert administrators. Manual enforcement is impractical, given the speed and scale of cloud environments. Automation ensures that security rules are applied consistently, regardless of how quickly resources are deployed. Policy enforcement tools embody the principle of secure by default, helping organizations maintain strong postures in dynamic, fast-changing cloud infrastructures without relying solely on human oversight. Secure API usage patterns are another critical defense. APIs are essential for automation, but often become targets when credentials are mismanaged. Best practices include storing API keys securely, rotating them regularly, and enforcing strict permissions on what each key can access. Rate limiting and monitoring protect against brute force or abuse attempts. Defenders must also avoid embedding secrets in code repositories, a common mistake that attackers exploit. Treating APIs as privileged gateways ensures that they are monitored and protected with the same rigor applied to user accounts. Secure API management ensures automation accelerates business without opening new attack pathways. Backup, recovery, and multi-region resilience planning are critical for ensuring continuity in cloud workloads. Cloud environments may offer built-in redundancy, but organizations remain responsible for configuring and maintaining effective backup strategies. Backups should be encrypted, tested regularly, and stored across multiple regions to withstand localized outages. Recovery procedures must be documented and rehearsed to ensure systems can be restored quickly during crises. Attackers often target backups, attempting to delete or encrypt them during ransomware campaigns. By implementing resilient multi-region strategies, organizations ensure they can recover operations even when primary cloud environments are disrupted or compromised. Continuous assessment is essential to maintain security in evolving cloud platforms. Tools such as CSPM, vulnerability scanners, and automated compliance checks provide constant evaluation of cloud resources. These tools detect misconfigurations, unpatched software, and emerging threats specific to cloud architectures. Unlike traditional systems, cloud resources change rapidly, making periodic audits insufficient. Continuous assessment ensures defenders adapt in real time, aligning security with the pace of cloud innovation. By integrating scanning and compliance into daily operations, organizations shift from reactive to proactive defense, catching vulnerabilities and missteps before they can be exploited by attackers. In summary, virtualization and cloud-specific defenses focus on operational discipline, configuration rigor, and identity management. Hypervisors must be hardened, images controlled, and networks segmented. Containers require privilege restrictions, image scanning, and immutability to stay secure. In the cloud, IAM, encryption, logging, automation, and continuous assessment are the cornerstones of defense. These measures are not about building walls, but about enforcing visibility, governance, and trust in highly dynamic environments. As organizations continue to shift workloads into virtualized and cloud-native platforms, recognizing and addressing these unique vulnerabilities becomes a central task in sustaining secure operations. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.